What is up, guys? It is JZNES back again with another video. Here we are talking about some Zelda Link Between Worlds, the sequel to Link to the Past, which is a pretty good Zelda game, all things considered. I know for a lot of people, that's one of their favorite Zelda games. And it's a game that I like quite a bit, and it's good, and it really defines what classic Zelda is gonna be like, uh, for the next while there. This is the guide, a very handy guide. It shows you where all of the collectibles are, all of the heart pieces and stuff. More than normal, it's pretty straightforward, and it actually gets you to where you need to be. I find myself confused with some of these Zelda guides, like the Skyward Sword one. I would just look it up online. Rather, more so here, it's a lot easier. Yeah, I still looked things up online as well, but this is a very handy guide. It's thin, it's small and compact, and it just works out really well for you. And because of the sort of non-linear nature of the game, at least the second part of the game there, the guide is really handy at laying it out. They do it in a certain order. Obviously, they have to put it on the page in a certain order, so they do it in their own way, but you can just kind of go to whatever section and be like, okay, this is the section I'm working on right now. How do I find said thing or whatnot? But it can lead to some confusion. Like, I was looking for this one specific part about this cave right when you get into this certain area, and I found it after I was done, like, trying the cave. I needed, like, one more little piece to the puzzle to get whatever treasure it was, and then it just ended up being a gold rupee, which is 300 rupees, which is a lot, but I was really far into the game at that point, and I really didn't care as much about collecting rupees at that point because I had a shit ton. But yeah, so collecting rupees is also a big aspect of this game. There's this new great system, since the dungeons are basically able to be done in any order once you reach the Dark World. The first 3 dungeons you kind of have to do in order, but once you reach the Dark World, all of the remaining dungeons, which is like 7 dungeons for the 7 sages, have to be done, or can be done in whatever order, as long as you kind of have the right equipment and have the right know-how to get to said dungeon and whatnot. It's really interesting. And this approach for this game really becomes my model. Not that they're going to use this, because they've already proven they don't really have the knowledge or the foresight to implement this into an open Zelda game with Breath of the Wild, which is one of the flaws of that game, which I'll get to here in a bit, or I'll get to next time, when we review Breath of the Wild. But in this game, you have a system where you can at first rent equipment, so they give you all of the items right off the gate that you want to rent. You have to have rupees to get them, of course, but eventually you get the rights to buy them, I think, as soon as you get to the Dark World. So the first 3 dungeons are kind of basically the tutorial dungeons, like they always are, but they still feel good in their own right, and exploring the world and getting around helps you to get to that point where you're comfortable with the other side of the world, the Dark World, that is. And but it's different because it's kind of segmented off based on this new mechanic where you can attach yourself to walls, and then you'll go through these holes that'll bring you out in the other dimension, much like the mirror in the original game, but you can't just come out anywhere. You come out where it wants you to, so you're constantly kind of having to think, kind of like the time portals in Oracle of Ages, except done like so much better. Most of the time you're not really confused about, okay, I have to go here, and then I specifically have to go like 3 steps to go here through this portal to get to this portal. Like, how is this going to affect this in this other world? Like, none of that shit. That was like super confusing about Ages. It's like done way better. It's like way more understandable, and that's really nice. And I think that's a big strength of this game in general. The dungeons aren't like particularly long or like big, you know. They're small enough to where they're digestible, but you kind of have to really think about the dungeon as a whole more so. And it really kind of feels like a better sense of design, like more like the older games where it was like, well, I don't know, it was kind of like maybe like the Ocarina era where the dungeons weren't like super huge, but there were like enough rooms that you might have to return to later to kind of keep you engaged and keep you thinking about it. I know everyone hates the water temple, but this is kind of the example that I'm thinking of there. Like if you have to backtrack or go back in the dungeon, which you do in this set of dungeons a lot, but um, like it's more like that where like you'll have done something to affect a different room. There even is a water temple in this one. I do like most of the dungeons, all except for like the ice dungeon was like really weird and it seemed extra bullshitty and like kind of cryptic to me at times. That was the only one I had any struggles with. The rest of them, I struggled at a little bit here and there, but it never felt like really bad. Like, oh, this is, I really don't understand like what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing kind of thing. I would figure it out eventually, or when I read it in the guide, it would make a lot of sense to me. So I feel like all the dungeons are pretty fair. They're all, like I said, pretty short, which actually makes for a like a real handheld experience. With the Oracle games and like most handheld Zelda games, even like the Minish Cap, I felt like these dungeons are like way too long to really be portable. And maybe that applies here as well, but I do feel like these dungeons are a lot more tended to the portableness of the system. Um, it was a 3DS game, and in that regard, you have the touchscreen and you also have the 3D element. The 3D element works really well, and the touchscreen actually works really well because you have your items down there. And unlike like Ocarina, where I think the items were kind of just like you couldn't move them around or whatever, you have a menu and you can move your items around, and you even have like a quick select option. It kind of works. I'm sure there's some people out there who like really made that work or whatever. For me, that was a little awkward. I just liked going into the menu and like kind of selecting my items or whatnot. You can move around your items, so I would put all like the bottles on the one side, and I put like all the rods in another row and stuff. It was just really nice to have everything kind of however I wanted it, you know. Pretty underrated feature of the game actually, because like you don't really get to do that very often. Again, Wind Waker, eat your heart out, you know, fucking get on the level of Breath of the Wild. Pins. 20 pins. You can put 20 pins anywhere. You can change the color on them, I think. Make them look a little different. It's not as expansive as Breath of the Wild, or, you know, there's not like some big beam of light like Skyward Sword or whatever. Pins. You can pin your map. What I did was I pinned every fairy fountain location. That way I would know where they're at. Because, you know, I don't have to look that up every time. And it's kind of hard to remember where they're all at just off the top of your head. Unless you're like really, really, and you like, you've played this game a bunch of times. Pins. Perfect. You can do creative shit with your map. Now, if I could have like drawn on there like the DS games, I think that would have been cool too. But pins, that's fine. That's a great system. They didn't have that shit in Wind Waker, and they didn't have that shit in the Wind Waker HD, which they easily could have fixed that. And it was really weird and kind of bad because it's like you're going around this big open area and you can't like, oh, here's an interesting thing, and I'll pin that so I remember that for later, you know? There you go. There's 20 of them, and you have 20 for the light world and 20 for the dark world, so you get to kind of work with them and stuff. Great. Good feature. Very good. Yeah. So, by the nature of the fact that you have a lot of items that you can get like right off the bat and you can rent them all, every time you die, you lose all of these items. So, within the first few dungeons, that's kind of annoying. But once you have the ability to buy the items, rubies aren't that hard to come by in this game. So once you just get a bunch of them, you can buy by the time I like had the ability to buy items, I bought like almost all of them except for like the 3 rods that I got the tornado one, but I didn't get the fire and ice rod, and then the sand rod I didn't have right away. You don't get that until later. Or you can get it right away if you go to that town and do that part. But I didn't do it right away. So, and I think I had left like the boomerang. So I had like maybe 5 or 6 of the items already paid for, and they're like 800 rupees, which sounds like a lot, but it really is not that hard to come by in this game. They give you rupees like everywhere, and if you're exploring, which you should be, they give you rupees everywhere. In dungeons and stuff, there's rupees everywhere. It's great. I love it. I love the feel of constantly collecting these rupees and knowing that they're going to go towards something. I don't think I ever fucking barely used rupees in Breath of the Wild, and like there's other Zelda games where you don't really use them at all except for like the mini games and stuff, and you can use them for the mini games and stuff in here, but the rental buying system is one of the most brilliant Zelda like inclusions like fucking ever. This is how all Zelda games should be from now on, and especially classic Zelda games, which they haven't made any more of since this point. I don't count Triforce Heroes or whatever because that's its own thing. So it's kind of sad that we haven't gotten an evolution of this. This was 2013. This is a long time ago. That is like, what, 9 years ago now, right? And it was great. And I love 2D Zelda. And this was kind of the big final send-off to 2D Zelda. I know they did the Link's Awakening remake, but that doesn't count, again, because it's a remake of a game. It was not an original game. Now, if people can just say, oh, this is a remake of Link to the Past, blah, blah, blah. No, it's a sequel to A Link to the Past. Bring back classic Zelda. That's all I'm saying. Or at least give us the Oracle remakes, you know? So, yes. I think that system is brilliant. I think the fact that they give you rupees at a very accessible rate is brilliant. I don't want to have to go and grind rupees. Nobody wants to do that. Yeah, and so it's super accessible. If you want to get everything in the game, you might have to go out of your way to find a few extra treasure chests or grind out a little bit of rupees, but for the most part the game gives you the amount of rupees that you need, which is cool. So that's awesome. The there's like the system of buying the weapons and stuff. That's awesome. They have a good variety of the weapons in this game. It's all like the best ones. It's mostly the ones from Link to the Past, but it's cool. And then so you're probably wondering, like, what do they give you in dungeons? Well, they give you, like, the mails, like the blue mail, the red mail. They'll give you, like, the Titan's mitts that let you pick up those big boulders in the overworld, or, like, the power glove, which isn't even, actually, the power glove's not even in a dungeon. Just stuff like that, though. 4 of the Dark World, or 3 of the Dark World dungeons have these things called Master Ores, and then you get one more in the Sanctuary by going through that again. Like a little mini extra dungeon there. And they'll let you upgrade your sword every time you get 2 of them. You get 2 of them, you take them to the blacksmith in the Dark World, and you take them to the blacksmith in the Light World, and they'll both do 1 upgrade to your sword, which is pretty cool. So, yeah. So that's like your big treasure for the dungeon. It doesn't feel like, oh, I need this to complete the dungeon. It feels like, oh, I got this, and now I can go and you know, upgrade my sword or whatever. So that's cool. It's different. It's a different feel for sure, but I like it. I think it really works overall. And on top of that, if the dungeons weren't cool enough and like traversing the overworld and whatever wasn't cool enough, they have these things called Mai-Mais. They're these little like squid looking dudes that are like hanging out on walls and trees and stuff, and you can hear them squeaking from nearby. And every time you bring 10 of them to this big my queen or whatever, she'll give you an upgrade to one of your items that you own. So once you start buying the items, you can bring her those from around the world. So it gives you a reason to explore every inch of the world as well, which is super cool, and access areas that you wouldn't. And so it's a really good version of the Koroks, like before the Koroks were even a thing. And the fact that they fucked that up so good just shows that they weren't really taking inspirations from this game. I hope that Tears of the Kingdom really takes a lot of inspirations from this game, because a lot of the aspects of this game are perfect for an open world Zelda. You could do more traditional dungeons and stuff. The argument is that you don't have the toolkit to do it because we can't just give you traditional items because that'll break the game. Well, if you have to rent and buy traditional items, maybe you can just make them usable in dungeons or something. I don't know. Figure it out. Like, we need more traditional dungeons in these Zelda games. And the fact that you can do them out of order, because then they're like, oh, well, what about the difficulty? Like, how do we do that? Well, you do it like you did in this game, where it just is. It just works, Take a lot of inspiration from this one. That's all I'm trying to say. That's what we need. I mean, this game is like the perfect blueprint for the future of Zelda, and they're just really not following it at the moment. And it's very disappointing because Breath of the Wild was such a big thing, everyone kind of forgot about Link Between Worlds, and they forgot how, influential that could have been to the series. But yeah. So, I don't know if I said it yet, but the 3D is also very good. It looks really nice as well. So, props for utilizing your console. A lot of times 3D in these games doesn't mean anything. This is definitely one of the better 3D experiences. Maybe because it is sort of based on a 2D experience, they could really do that better. But I thought it was really good. So, I think 3D can be a pretty gimmicky thing, but when you do it like to the Virtual Boy quality of level of 3D, you do it good. So, and this game did that well. So, yeah. Like, also obviously the music is also really good because there's a lot of tracks from A Link to the Past, and there's a lot of new tracks like this, and a lot of other good little tracks there. Zelda music's pretty much always good, so not a lot to comment on there, but yeah, really killer soundtrack again. They knocked that one out of the park. But yeah, like, the world is very similar to A Link to the Past. If you know A Link to the Past, it's got a lot of those elements there. You recognize a lot of things, but it is different too because it's different in a lot of little subtle ways from A Link to the Past, and that's pretty cool. I like that. So, longtime fans will get a lot out of it, but also new fans will get out a lot of it too. Because there's still surprises to be had for both. So, yeah, but there's a lot of things that if you kind of know the original game, you're kind of going to know, oh, maybe there's a secret here, because there was in the original game kind of thing as well. The storyline's pretty interesting. It's like the whole high rule and low rule thing is pretty interesting. There's like Princess Zelda and there's like Princess Hilda in the Dark World and all that, and that's interesting. The whole like merging into walls mechanic is pretty cool, like I said. That like follows into the story as well. I would say like all the bosses are pretty good. There's some that are kind of annoying because they just go on a little bit too long. But that's like typical Zelda stuff. There was like this hand that like, just a big hand with like an eyeball on the bottom, and there's like cracked things all down there, all like on the floor. Like, the kind of cracks that you like could bomb or whatever. So if the hand hits those become holes. And that's kind of its main form of attack. Earlier in that dungeon, too, there were the Wall Masters, which are kind of a really annoying enemy in this game, but you can't kill them and they'll go away for a little bit. But they can come down and grab you. They only take you back to, like, the beginning of the room. I think some of them do take you back to the beginning of the dungeon, but most of them just take you back to the beginning of the room. But anyway, so it's basically a big Wall Master, and then he'll, like, punch into the wall, and that's how you get him. You have to, like, get him to punch into the wall. You, like, merge into the wall. But there's this phase where he's just doing that for like forever, and it just takes so long. So like maybe that would be like my one complaint, is that sometimes things take a little while. there's a little bit of waiting, you know, which like most Zelda games have, but it gets a little annoying sometimes when you have to like constantly wait to time that kind of stuff or whatever. You're just sitting there like, oh god, can this just end already? But, you know, for the most part, the boss design was pretty cool, and a lot of them were reminiscent of older bosses and stuff, and yeah. But I mean, overall, it's just a really well designed and well made Zelda game, and I really enjoy it. Aesthetically, it's also very nice. The graphics and the atmosphere feels really good, especially for 3DS. Um, you know, aside from the 3D, obviously, the whole other aesthetic of the world and whatnot looks good. Uh, but yeah, like pretty much everything about the game is just like really good. Um, it's not perfect, but it has far fewer flaws than a lot of other games, and a lot of games like let's say like a Skyward Sword. It's really not as flawed as something like that. It's well designed, it's well paced because you're always going to the next dungeon, and if you're not, you are exploring the world. You can find Mai-Mais. There's lots of little mini games to do, heart pieces to find, you know, that kind of thing. The pace is just perfect. It's like right on, and I think I've played this game like 3 different times, and then I beat it, you know, and it is the perfect like amount of a handheld sort of Zelda as well. So it's very much the like full realization of like classic Zelda, I would say. So yeah, that's really good, and I like that about it. And I mean, there's not much else to say. It's just a really good 2D Zelda game, and it's kind of the swan song of 2D Zelda games, because I mean, there hasn't been any since that are not a remake or part of the side series or something like that. You know, it's just like, this is it, and they need to come back to this and take some inspiration from this. Maybe put out a couple of these, or like one of these, you know, while they're making their bigger Zelda games or something. Have a different team do it or something. I don't know. Give it to Capcom again. Maybe not. I don't know. They also made Ages. They did make Minish Cap and Seasons, which were 2 great games, but Ages was a big misstep. Probably still one of the least good Zelda games. Yeah. So, but let's not talk about that. We're talking about Link Between Worlds, which was a really good Zelda game. Oh, okay. I have one other complaint of a part. There's one part where you're in the Lost Woods and you have to follow these Poes to get to the Master Sword, and so you have to like watch which like way they go between like 3 directions or whatever. And then the last one, all of the ones that say "Don't follow me" go into all of the paths. So I would just keep going in these paths, like, because I'm like, oh, I must have missed it or something. Like, which one? The solution is you go behind you. You go back the way you came, and that leads you to the Master Sword. It's like, what? Are you fucking kidding me? That's such bullshit. It was not presented as an option before, you know. So yeah, there's like a couple things like that, but like it's not too big of a flaw. You know, I mean, overall, it's a really great Zelda game. It looks really good. The gameplay is really good. The gameplay ideas, the item system, and the amount of rupees and just like the pacing with that is good. The non-linearity of the dungeons, where you can go to any dungeon and just explore. That's cool. I like that. That's it's like the perfect roadmap for an open Zelda game. And it's dense. It's not too open to where it's like, oh, there's nothing to do in this world and all we did was fill it with Koroks, Breath of the Wild. You know, there's Mai-Mais everywhere, which actually do something. They add to your upgrade system. Like Breath of the Wild, you only need so many of them, but like every single one that you get, you know, every 10 that you would get, I guess, in this game kind of leads you towards a better upgraded item, which is cool. And there's like other things you can upgrade and stuff too, and you can look for like bottles and stuff in the overworld. There's like 5 bottles that you can get, that I got anyway. I don't know. There's maybe more than that. So it's a lot, you know. There's like a lot of side content, which is good. I mean, it's what you want. It's like a really beefy Zelda game, and I like that. But you also don't have to do that stuff. And if you don't do a lot of that stuff, the experience will be faster, and it's up to you. Do you want to do it or not? And it's not even like Majora's Mask, where it's like, oh, you're going to be missing out on so much of the game if you don't do it. It's like, nah, you're good if you don't do it. If you want to do it, though, you'll get more out of the game. You know, it's great. You know, it's the perfect amount of whatever you want to be there. If you want more out of it, you get more out of it. If you don't want more out of it, you just want to beat the game, that's going to be great too. So it's the perfect balance, and I like that. I think like the music's great. Like I said, the gameplay is great. The dungeons are great. The bosses are pretty good for the most part. They're all, I would say, good. You know, there's some hiccups, like I said, here and there, but like they're very minor hiccups. And I think it's a really good execution of a 2D Zelda game. It's like almost a perfect 2D Zelda game. There are 2D Zelda games I like more, Link's Awakening, but that's because, you know, that's just my preference. I would say this is as close as it is to having a 2D Zelda game that I think just carries all the good aspects of 2D Zeldas. And I really enjoy that about the game. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's great. And I think it's a great roadmap for what an open Zelda can be. You know, it's more dense than just like open for the sake of being open. It actually feels like it has a purpose, and I like that. And it doesn't feel like it's wasting your time. It never feels like it's wasting your time, and that is brilliant. The pacing is so good. So yeah, it's like the perfect 2D Zelda game, and it has that classic Zelda aesthetic too. It looks like the older Zelda, like Zelda 1 and Zelda Link to the Past, which that art style they kind of lost over time, you know. But it has that, and I really like that it feels like that classic Zelda aesthetic. Because I love that Zelda aesthetic. It's classic, you know. But yeah. So Link Between Worlds is really great. It's I don't want to call it perfect, but I mean it's pretty close to being there, you know. I really enjoyed my time with it. So I'm going to give it a 9.7 out of 10. Because it's a great Zelda game. And it's the standard for 2D Zelda going forward, I would say. So yeah, there it is. Link Between Worlds. Until next time, this is JZNES saying keep it classic. Stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ out.